All right, the average retirement age in the U.S. is around 64, right? So when many hit their 50s, it feels like you can finally start seeing the light. From tax planning to healthcare options, though, we know there are strategies that need to come into play during this decade to ensure that you're ready to call it quits. So here once again with expert advice, Cory Sickles, owner of Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors. Good to see you, Cory.
Glad to be here, Robin.
Okay, so I feel like when people hit their 50s, they kind of realize it's this, I have more of my career behind me than in front of me. I can see, like I said, right, the light at the end of the tunnel. Do you find, though, that that's kind of a scary thought for many people, that they thought about it, or it's exciting because, hey, I get to retire soon, right?
You know, days go slow. Years go by very fast.
So quick.
Right? I mean, so I'm in my 50s, right? And it's kind of hard to believe that 60s are approaching, a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And this is the time that you really have to, you really have to start focusing on what's my retirement going to look like in your 50s.
You got to hone in, like your 50s, you got to focus.
You do.
Yeah. Okay, so what would be one thing that you recommend someone in their 50s, and maybe they are behind on their savings? They're looking at that account saying, hey, I didn't save as much as I thought I should have or could have during my time.
Right. And I think a lot of times when clients or prospects come in, most of them come in to see us, I would say mid-50s, late 50s, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you have to look at it up to this point, what have you been doing? You've been probably paying for a mortgage. You probably have been paying maybe for student loans.
Helped
Kids
your
are
kids.
expensive.
Yeah, yeah.
And now you might be an empty nester or getting close to being an empty nester. Now it's kind of like focusing on you. And if you really look at, I'll use a 401k for example, during this time frame, once you reach the age of 50, you can actually contribute more. So you can contribute up to $7,500 more in your 401k, whether it's a traditional side or whether it's a Roth side. So this is a great time to be able to take that opportunity to actually save more for your retirement.
Okay, and that's important. I don't even know if people always know that either.
Right.
You're right, like that they can do more. Okay, so you've talked about the importance, proper allocations, diversifications. So is there something people should do differently in regards to both of those when they hit their 50s?
I think this is a very important time to be able to go online, figure out what is your risk level, to make sure you're allocated the correct way, right? I mean, it's natural. In your 20s and 30s and 40s, you're a little bit more aggressive. Retirement's like 20 years away. Mm-hmm. But now you could be anywhere from, you're 10 to 15 years away from from retirement, and you want to make sure that the money's going to be there, right? So, you might have been 80%, 90% stocks in your 40s. This is the time to probably look at your risk tolerance and make sure you're balanced, the correct way, because you don't want to lose, $10, $50, $100,000 just because we have a downside in the market.
Right, and I think one of the things, no matter your age, that has probably been in your mind about retirement is Social Security. Yeah. And is it going to be there? How much is it going to be? What am I looking at? So will the 50-somethings of today, let's focus on them, will they be able to count on Social Security in the way we know it right now?
Well, we'll definitely be able to count on it. Now, whether there be a reduction in it, who knows? But this is the time to probably look back and make sure that you have 35 years of what we call considerable earnings, right?
Okay.
So the way a lot of people have, how does Social Security really work? They take your top 35 years of income, right? So in your 50s, this is probably the time you're making the most amount of your income. So it's a great time to be able to get rid of some of those lower years, or maybe you're in that position where you haven't had the 35 years, and this is the way to be able to contribute to make sure you're going to be able to max out whatever Social Security is. We only can plan today on what we know from a Social Security standpoint. If things change, if you're working with a financial planner, that's part of changing your financial plan to make sure you can accommodate if there are changes in Social Security. So that's why it's so important to have a financial plan, especially in your 50s.
And I think one of the things many people find themselves, even in their 50s, right, is with a lot of debt. If they look at a mortgage, they did all those things you mentioned, right? So is that something they should pay off now? Should they save first, pay off later? What is your advice to those folks?
Well, I would say sit down with an advisor. You want to get out of debt, but you also want to be able to save. So there's got to be kind of a balance there.
Okay.
Obviously, you want to get rid of credit card debt. You might be paying over 20% interest. That's one thing. But going into retirement, you want to be able to have the least amount of debt as possible. So it's important to be able to sit down with an advisor, find out what you should be able to do, because if you can pay that mortgage off, you might have a car payment for as long as you live. Maybe that's the case.
Reality,
but you don't want credit card debt. And in an ideal situation is not to have a mortgage, because that could save you $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month that you'll actually need in retirement.
Absolutely. All right. And then if you don't have a planner, as he mentioned, it's vital in your 50s to have somebody to go through all of these options with you to help you on your path forward. Cory's team, safeharboroh.com, they have a couple of local locations, right? You're in Easton and Dublin.
Yes, we are.
If somebody wanted to sit down with you, also, they can do a Zoom call or whatever it takes for you to have a consult and really, ask some questions and get your plan in order. So, Cory, thank you.
Thank you, Robin.